Welcome to another edition of Timetable London, the podcast crafted by lovers of London for lovers of London. I'm your host, Tam MacDonald, and pleased as ever to be joined by my friend and co-host Geoff Browell, Senior Archivist at King's College London. Today, we're coming to you from the Freemason's Arms on Downshire Hill in Hampstead, a gloriously spacious pub that describes itself as London's country pub. The original was built in 1819 as part of the development of Downshire Hill, observed in 1818 by poet John Keats, who lived just down the road, as the half-built houses opposite. I don't think he ever finished that sonnet. The present pub was built in the 1930s, and tucked away in the pub cellar, you will find the only Skittles alley in London. It is here, every year, that the Freemasons' Arms hosts the London Skittles World Championships, with a degree of parochialism that's known only to Americans with their baseball world championships. It's quite a draw for tourists looking for an unusual night out. Far better known to many more people is the fact that the Freemasons sits right across the road from Hampstead Heath, one of many deliciously open spaces that have become such a unique feature of the London landscape, almost as famous as their hundreds of cosy pubs. Where else, Geoff, can you enjoy such a combination of fresh air and bracing exercise?
I know, because we're 12,000 feet up here. Is that? Because it really is very, very high indeed. I did a little bit of research on Downshire Hill when I was walking up Downshire Hill. So there are some very famous people who have lived here. Peggy Ashcroft lived here.
Yep.
And our guest can perhaps talk a little bit more about Peggy. Lee Miller, the famous photographic pioneer during the war, lived here. But beating it all was Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets, because I spotted his blue plaque coming up the hill. So
yes.
that trumps it all, and that really so.
Right. But even better than all of those.
But even better than all of those, we are joined today. Well, perhaps you would like to introduce yourself.
I think they've guessed already, probably.
The Lion of Belsize Lane.
It's Maureen Lipman,
Hello.
a famous actress and, writer, actress. How would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as an actress who writes, wife, mother, serial Mario.
Careful.
I'm trying to catch up on Elizabeth Taylor, who lived for a while right up there and the top of the hill, that wonderful little street full of rich houses, with Richard Burton. So yes.
Vale of Health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, really?
That's the word.
Well,
The Vale of Health, which of course was the only place not struck by the plague.
yes.
That's
Indeed.
why it's called the Vale of Health.
But how old was he when he died?
Richard
Yeah.
lived a long life, but I think he was about 58.
He was 58. Did you ever work with him?
No, I never worked with Richard. No, I was a huge fan of Elizabeth Taylor, and I could, as a teenager, I knew all the lines from her films. This is in Hull, and I used to walk
Butterfield
up.
8.
Sorry.
Was it the Butterfield something?
Yeah, because Eddie Fisher's lines, I used to do an impersonation of Eddie Fisher. I must be the only person in the world who did. Because I'm sick of seeing you coming in here boozed up, burned out and ugly.
Oh, wow. I feel as if I'm transported right back there.
And then I did Elizabeth Taylor from Cleopatra when she said, I asked it of Julius Caesar. I demand it of you.
Yes. Oh, really, it's given me a flutter now in my heart.
Yeah.
So you made your way from Hull to London and you went to LAMDA, didn't you? So what was it like arriving in London at that time?
Well, my mother got me digs in Baron's Court with two fearsome sisters who advertised in the back of the Jewish Chronicle. I had a room in their large flat. They were quite censorious, of what I was doing, and particularly when I got into London life and I was out down the Earls Court Road or going up to see to nightclubs and things. So I had to move out of Barons Court in the end. But my life was around the Earls Court Road. Mm-hmm. LAMDA was there. It was a big old building on the corner. Now it's very swish. They've raised enough money to build a small country, and they've got a fantastic theatre. So I had to say, when I went to all the students, just realise this is the best theatre you will ever appear in, because the next one will be with cracked basins and one toilet between all the men and women. But then it was just a series of rooms. It was rather wonderful, rather a wonderful place to learn your craft. But I didn't, we went up the Earls Court Road. We went to the Palier de Siena for our snails. That was a bit much for a girl from Hull. Kosher snails. Yeah. And I didn't think we even went to the theatre that much, except to Hare, which opened at the Shaftesbury Theatre, and was just a revolution. And we used to go all the time. One of the girls, Annabel Leventon, was in it playing Sheila. So and we would just go up on stage at the end and dance. I don't know how we did it. But so there was Shaftesbury Avenue and there was the Earls Court Road. And then there was wherever I hung my hat. I shared a flat with Leslie Joseph, who's, Birds of a Feather, Leslie Joseph. She was in my year at drama school, and we're still friends. In fact, she's coming over tomorrow. And so there's that strange little triangle of the Earls Court Road, Shaftesbury Avenue, and the little theatre that we had for Lambda across the road in Logan Place, where we put on our shows. And then the next thing was I got a job in Watford. So then it was just, Euston Station. I think it's funny, I was interviewing Thelma Ruby, the 100-year-old thespian actress last night, and she said she remembered getting a taxi to go to the Labour Exchange to get her, to pick up a thing for the week, and then have the taxi waiting outside. I mean, it's astonishing.
What did she get home with? How much money did you get home with?
Well, you're right, because it was the dole was what? What did you get? About 10 quid a week or so?
Yeah.
20 quid a week or something?
Yeah.
But the taxis were much cheaper then.
Taxes were cheaper, yes. And maybe that she was pretty, maybe they took... that's my Bloody Mary rattling. Yes, I know. I remember going to Lissom Grove to sign on after this job at Watford, and they said to me, what do you do? And I said, I'm an actress. And they said, OK. And they looked down the jobs. I've told this story wrong, which is, I knew that if I said I was an actress, they would try to find me alternative work. So I said I was a shepherd.
As one does.
And unfortunately, there was very little work for me in London. So, and after that, I got the film of Up the Junction, amazingly. Since I'd never been up the junction, I'd hardly ever met a Cockney. And the director was only seeing genuine Cockneys from the Battersea and Clapham and Peckham. Somehow I got away with it. And then my life was living in... was I living in Earls Court Road? Yes, I must have still been round there. I moved to Battersea Park Road, where one of the staff of Lambda had a room that she let out. And then I was in Clapham all the time. We were filming in studios, and that was incredibly exciting. Of course, I was still pretending to be a Cockney for 13 weeks. Mm-hmm. It's an old story, but I didn't realise that once they'd put you on film, they weren't going to fire you unless you were shocking. And so for 13 weeks, only Adrian Poster and Susie Kendall knew that I was from Hull. And the director, of course, was an ex-Bernardo's boy from the East End, and he, was very firm about the accents being authentic. And it was only when I saw the Rushes, I was so horrified by what I looked like, and remained so to this day, that I burst into tears, and he followed me into the loo, and I told him, it was a toilet in those days, I told him that I wasn't a Cockney, I was from Hull. And he said, that's interesting. He said, I'm from Grimsby. And we were pulling the same gag, but he was never quite the same with me afterwards, Peter Collinson, and he went on to make the Italian job, Oh, he's supposed to blow the bloody doors off. Yeah. And so then we had the premiere in Clapham at the Clapham, now defunct Odeon, and we danced the night away at some Chelsea nightclub. I remember dancing with Mick Jagger's brother. That was a coup. And then I went, after Up the Junction, I went to Manchester to join a company called The Stable. So by the time I came back with a boyfriend who I later married, Jack Rosenthal, who I'd met in Manchester. So we then found a place here. There was an actress called Jenny Stoller who'd gone off on a tour with Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream, the famous one in the white box.
The spinning plates and things.
Yes,
yeah,
and
I saw that.
And she'd gone on a world tour. She had a beautiful flat in Lake House, overlooking the lake on Hampstead Heath, and she let it to Jack and I, and we lived happily there for a year. People used to come occasionally and drop off drugs. And we'd say, not today, thank you. Not that Jenny was a smoker, but I mean, it was the 60s, you know, and we were...
There's a bit of it about.
Club del Aretusa, we were dancing and we were going to hair and we were having the odd joint. And but then we settled down, didn't we? And Jack and I, moved from Hampstead when she came back, and we got married. Yes, we got married in Upper Berkeley Street Synagogue, and he had a sort of tame rabbi who he brought with him. Upper Berkeley Street is still the West London Synagogue, and it's 170 years old. It's one of the first Reform synagogues, because Jack had been married before, so we had to join the Reform movement, and it was an absolutely beautiful synagogue. The rabbi was Hugo Grin, who was on The Moral Maze, a famously gifted man, spiritual man, and we got a flat here on Rosslyn Hill, number 31. You can still see it because it's got two round concrete balls on the door. But my mother would always say, when she came from Hull, she would always say, it's the house with the two round things on the columns, because she would not bring herself to say balls. And we lived in this flat, and it was a ground floor flat. We became very friendly with the Bolton-born couple downstairs, Brian and Edith, and they had the garden flat, and we then had children and had to move away from it, which was tragic, really, because we loved that flat. It was a typical grand house, a Victorian, divided into flats. And we had this ground floor, which meant we had very high ceilings and big square rooms. And this was something that I'd learnt from Jack. Jack was 13 years older than me, and therefore, you know, had a love of antiques and things. He was not a rocker. And I was not a rocker either, but I pretended to be for some years, you know how you do. I mean, I had, you know, an afro and beads, and but then I settled down.
And a Cockney accent.
No, I did stop after 13 with it.
A whole Cockney accent.
Yes, there's a marvellous Mike Parkinson interview with me after Up the Junction, in which I'm dressed up like you would not believe. My mother always taught me to accessorise. And I've got spangled, I've got this little waistcoat on, and I've got a red felt skirt and gold round here, unbelievable, and a bubble cut. And I'm literally saying to him, I mean, the marvellous part about being from the north is that you don't have to lose your accent. I mean, after Albert Finney and Tom Courtenay, really one can speak without received pronunciation. I don't know how I had the gall to get away with it, but I got away with it. And then, you know, we lived here. We loved Hampstead. And then one day I said to him, you know, the thing about Hampstead, by now he was working in a cupboard, because we'd got the only other bedroom was for the Amy. And so he was working in a cupboard with a field mouse muraled on the wall, which we'd had for her, and this little cupboard off our bedroom. And I said one day, you know, the thing about Rosslyn Hill is you can walk up the hill or you can walk down the hill. I mean, it's time to, you know, walk flat. And so we went to Muswell Hill because it was good for children's schools. Now, Muswell Hill is one of those Edwardian suburbs one of those Edwardian suburbs. I just tried to take my coat off and the mic's in it, so that was a mistake. I was a bit hot. With, very sort of been rather, well, it would have been suburban, wouldn't it? It would have been way out of London. And we could afford a terraced house on a street called Duke's Avenue, which led directly down to Alexandra Palace, where the first live television was broadcast. And so it was a great place. We had a little alleyway which led directly into the park. There was an animal enclosures, and we used to take the children to see the llamas and the alpacas farting, which they always did. The kids loved that. By now we had a little boy.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, what's not to like about a llama farting? Yeah, alarming. Anyway, they went to state school. They went to state school there. Which sort of didn't really work out for my daughter. And ultimately we moved them to the school you know only too well. My son went to St Anthony's. So that was back to Hampstead every day. Cars and traffic and bad temper. And Amy went to Queen's College, which is in Harley Street. So from Muswell Hill to Harley Street was some schlep. And at some point, when she became a teenager, she took to walking from Muswell Hill through Highgate, all the way to Harley Street for a while.
Every day?
Yeah.
That's what, about 4 or 5 miles?
At least. Yes.
And uphill all the way back.
Yeah, well, we used to pick her up. But it was, she wanted to exercise and she wanted to think, and she's a playwright, she wanted to daydream.
I've been noticing about 17 questions on the way through to where we are now, and I can't help but be bemused that you got away from Rosslyn Hill to get away from hills, and you went to Muswell Hill.
It wasn't, but it was metaphorically the thing about the hill, not really physically. It was the fact that you went there to the grocer, you went up there if you wanted some socks, you went down there if you I just got sick of the same scenery. So, and also we did need a house because, said she grandly, but, we needed a garden where the kids could kick the ball.
Yeah.
And we could put a climbing frame. So we got this, and it was a narrow little house. And we got an au pair, as you do. A string of weirdos came through our house, including an Australian girl who'd sent a very good reference from the Arboglen nursery and in Queensland, and was absolutely useless with the children. Also, it was the first pair of leggings I'd ever seen. I said, she's forgotten her skirt, Jack, look at her. You can see her arse. I couldn't believe it. And one day I said to her, Sandy, how many children did you have in your care in the nursery? She said, how do you mean? I said, how many kids were you looking after? Not kids, no, pot plants. So we had to have an au pair who could drive, because some of the driving to Queen's College, had to, and we did a run with other families to St Anthony's, but nobody else from us went to Queen's, so there was a lot of driving, and what I've missed out, and I'm rambling, do you want to ask me?
Ramble away.
But what I missed out is that the time at the Old Vic, which I don't know why I've missed out, because it was the happiest time of my life. Having Jack with me in London writing, and cycling from Rosslyn Hill, or Lake House initially, cycling to Waterloo to the Old Vic. I had a bike which I called Arbonate. Bicarbonate, do you get it? And it was yellow, and I would carry my crocheting, because I was understudying and everything in those days, carry my crocheted blanket, which got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I would cycle across London, and I would cycle home after the show, because, at 11 o'clock at night, quite happily. And when I passed over the bridge, the Waterloo Bridge, to the cut where the Old Vic Theatre, the most beautiful theatre in the world, and in those days, before Mr. Spacey renovated it, it had the best acoustics ever. And walking and riding my bicycle across Waterloo Bridge was, what's the word, Wordsworthian.
Yes.
There is nothing to show more fair than that bridge, with everything on the right and the difference on the left, and the buildings. Nothing is so fair as that, and nothing to me says London as much as the view from that bridge.
Waterloo Bridge you're talking about?
Yeah.
I think it's the finest view of any bridge.
Because it's on the bend, isn't it? So you can see in all directions.
All directions.
It was mainly built by women. The
Yes,
last
it was.
bridge.
It was known as the Women's Bridge. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
It's just after the war, during the war.
Yes, during the war, yeah. So, not the original bridge, which is obviously just after the Battle of Waterloo, but the next one.
So, you mean because the men were away, the women were
Yeah.
taught soldering and iron... Isn't that amazing?
Bridge building, in fact.
Bridge building, yes. Which, of course, women do naturally, doing that.
Well, indeed.
Fancy that.
So when you were doing this, when you were there, did you ever look back on your life in Hull? And did you ever look forward? Did you think, how lucky I am to be where I am? Or were you just living in the moment?
I think I did think how lucky I am to be where I am. With how often in your life can you be happy in your relationship? Can you be having an absolute ball at work? We worked all day long on rehearsing, and then we did another. It was repertory. I'm talking about a company with Laurence Olivier, Geraldine McEwen, Maggie Smith, Frank Finlay, Albert Finney, Billy Whitelaw, and we had a dressing room full of wonderful women. We were doing the front page, the National Health, a marvellous selection of plays. Much Ado About Nothing, Zeffirelli, with Maggie Smith and Albert Finney and Frank. I mean, it was Ronnie Pickup and Charlie Kay.
What years are we talking about from there?
We're talking about 1970 to 73.
Right.
And it was a golden time. And Sir Lawrence would eat in the canteen downstairs with us, and Joan Plowright was there. Wonderful actress and a really nice woman, and we were part of the best company in the world, and I was a tiny part of it. I understudied Diana Rigg in Jumpers by Tom Stoppard, and she would have first of all, the pub was next door. We all drank before, during and after the show. I don't think anything of it. No actor would do that now. Diana always had champagne on ice and a bridge game going on in her dressing room.
Just like me.
Is this the stage door?
Stage door, yes.
Pub.
That's the pub next door,
Yeah.
but it wasn't called the stage door then. I think it was called the Old Vic or the Victoria. Anyway, I would pop in on Diana at night. She'd say, "Oh, come in, darling." She was from Doncaster, of course. I'd say, "Come in, have a glass of wine, have a bit of champagne, sit down. What's your day been like?" and everything. When I took over in Long Day's Journey into Night with Dennis Quilley, who lived on Willow Road up here. Dennis Quilley was a fabulous actor, brought into the Old Vic by Michael Blakemore because he'd worked with him in Glasgow. And Dennis was not a natural, he was a musical comedy man. But he had such energy, and he had a house in Willow Road down there, which he used to grow vegetables out the floorboards. Ronnie Pickup, Dennis Quilley, Long Day's Journey into Night. I'd walk past Dennis's and Ronnie's dressing room. Bottle of scotch was beyond the table, and there was a wonderful occasion where I was worried because I'd got the maid. I was the maid. I just had one scene, and I had to go out as Sir Lawrence came in to Constance Cummings, his wife. I had to say, "Well, don't be looking at me that way. If I've a drop taken, I didn't steal it. I was invited." And one Saturday afternoon, I swept out and I got a round. And I went into Dennis and Ronnie's dressing room. I said, "He's not going to like that, sir. Oh, he's going to be livid." And they said, "Oh, it's great. 3-act plays. And it's just lovely to have a laugh." So I said, "I tell you," and at that moment he walked past in his dressing gown with his pince-nez. When he walked past and went past the door, I thought, "Oh, got away with it." Boys gave me a scotch. He came back and he leant on the door and he said, "Darling baby girl, so clever. but, we can't have it. I said, I know, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I said, I think I did I changed the inflection. I think instead of saying I was invited, I said, I was invited. And I think it's that gave me... And he said, no. I turned away at a particular point and that gave it to you. Oh, I said, fine. I never got it again. Never got it again. So it was thrilling. My dad and mum came up from Hull. My dad said to Lawrence Olivier, you must be very proud to have my daughter in your company. He said, I certainly am, Mr. Lipman. He said. And every day was just, as I remember it, sometimes after I was understudying in Jumpers, Alan Mitchell and I used to stay in the dressing room crocheting because I didn't know how to cast off this huge blue blanket. And then one day Diana said to me, darling, I've got to have a back operation, you're on. And I will never forget that, sitting in her dressing room trying to make a wig fit my tiny head, and hearing the audience come in and the announcement, ladies and gentlemen, at tonight's performance, Miss Diana Rigg is unavailable. Oh, no! The whole audience. The part will be played by Maureen Lipman. Oh. So we got through that. And then, sometimes Jack would come and pick me up and we'd go to Joe Allen's. I'm painting a rosy glow because that was how it felt. It felt like the most wonderful time of one's life, and one thought it would always be that good. And in many ways it has been.
Hi, this is Tam MacDonald, your host. If you're enjoying Timetable London, then please tell your friends about us by sending them a link to the show, giving us a mention on social media, or even especially by chatting about us in the pub. Timetable London, for everything you love about the world's greatest city.
So were you starstruck with these characters?
I was starstruck with Maggie Smith. I could not speak to Maggie then or now. Obviously not now, but even in the last few years, I've always lost myself. I used to see her sometimes at Health Farm. If I used to go to Greyshot, she'd be there, and my heart would start pounding in the swimming pool because I had seen her do such astonishing work. And I'd watched her as an understudy, and I thought, how does she do that? And one day I went to see her speak at St. John and St. Elizabeth Hospital. And she'd been there. She didn't do that sort of thing. I do it she didn't do that sort of thing. So I thought, I want to hear this. This was, within the last 5 years. She did a bit of Alan Bennett, and she sort of chatted a bit. And afterwards I went up to see her, and she said, oh, I thought I saw you sitting there. I thought, what's she doing here? So I said, well, I just wanted to hear you. And I feel, I burbled something, and she got taken away by someone else. So I went home, and I was just braising some steak. Home at that time would have been in Paddington, where I moved 3 years after Jack died to a lower ground flat in Paddington, which my dear friend Lizzie thought I shouldn't move into, but it was quite a good move actually. It's been a fabulous flat for the last 21 years until I met David. Anyway, I was braising some steak and the phone rang. This boy said, I've had a terrible job finding you. I've had to ring your agent. I knew right away. Oh, he said, well, what happened to you? 1 minute you were there and the next minute you'd gone. I said, I'll be honest with you, Maggie, I have been in awe of you my whole life. And when I talk to you, I don't know what to be, because I feel that, and darling, we're all like that, aren't we? We're all going to feel that tap on the shoulder and somebody says, you can't really do it, can you, dear?
So what made her stand out? Because there were other actresses of her generation that were pretty special too.
What she did that was so extraordinary was she made antiquated, archaic language modern. And the reason she could do that was, I think, Kenneth Williams, because she worked with him in review.
Oh, right.
Share My Letters. And she learnt that extraordinary sort of, and you can do that with Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing. And I just watched her and thought, because I wasn't really a classical actress, or I wasn't perceived as a classical actress, probably because of my ethnicity, I thought that was complete magic. When she would take a pause and turn around and go, you know, it brought the house down. And I remember a particular performance in a play about a theatre company, Rose Trelawney of the Wells, and they were being given their parts, and her boyfriend got a part that wasn't very good, and she said, "Oh, Ferdy, that's a rotten part," and got a monstrous laugh on a line that has no humour in it whatsoever.
I come to mention, it is Williams-esque, isn't it? That Davina. That.
Yes. But she refined it to make it her own, and she... You know,
well, with him it sounds camp.
With him,
and her not so much.
Not so much, but a bit. Yeah, no. She, you know, she just did things that were very bold, and I wanted to do them. I wanted to be like that, but of course I didn't get the repertoire. But in my own way, I've worked the theatre's area, which I came to know and love, as I did about 33 plays in the West End, all told. The Haymarket is my favourite because you get a really nice dressing room. And all the plays I've done, they all toured first. And one night at Bath, there was supposed to be a ghost at Bath. And I was in there's one dressing room on the stage left, and all the others are on stage right, and they'd all gone up to have the warm Chardonnay, you know, given by the company manager. And I came out of my dressing room aiming to go that way. And then, because I was afraid I might see the ghost, I saw this door marked exit. This is a Bath story, not a London story. And I went through it, and it locked, and I found myself in an enclosure with iron railings all the way around. It was pouring with rain. And it was the first night, and they were all partying upstairs, and I couldn't get out. They had pointed things on all the tops of the thing, couldn't get out. So I thought, this is one of those places where you must use, you know, be practical. And I started to sort of shout, "Hello, is anybody there? I'm locked in." And hello, nobody. And then finally a woman came past with a dog and a bike. And I said, "Can you go round to the front of the theatre and tell them that the leading lady's trapped and sodden?" And somebody came with a key and let me out. It was, but all those theatres, the Haymarket, beautiful theatre, beautiful, the building of them, you know. And there's a thing now whereby lots of directors sort of have producers, like, have their own theatres. And there's nothing like the sweep of a rep. Rep. I actually missed rep. Thelma was talking about rep last night. I missed it. I never did what she did, which was twice nightly, learning the play act by act, one act on a Tuesday, one act on a Wednesday, one act on a Thursday, and performing it the following Monday. You know, I mean, your stomach just churns, but they did it. And, you know, I'm the sort of person who doesn't really care whether there's 3-4 people to entertain or there's 4,000. I don't really mind, but I do like a theatre with a bit of a curve to it. And, you know, when I go in the Albert Hall to the Proms, I am completely in awe of that building.
So what's of film, theatre, or television, which
Radio.
would be your favourite?
Well, I don't really have a favourite because whatever I'm doing, I find something to like. Filming, I do like because I like all the sitting around chatting and then suddenly bringing the performance to life. Something like, I mean, look, you can only be as good as the parts you're given. I've been in 2, maybe 3 palpable hits. One was Rejoice, which was very much my own thing. And there was a lot. We opened at the Fortune Theatre, which is a very small and very useful theatre. So everybody wants it because you can have a small show in there and make money with the seating. And that Susan Hill thing, the Woman in Black, was there for 20 odd years after Rejoice. And then we opened at Rejoice again at the Duchess and did another season. It came from my soul, that show.
So that Joyce Grenfell?
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was quite a lot of, I got some really sort of quite nasty letters, not, from people saying, keep your hands off Joyce, she was English. Hello. But I figured that after people came to see Joyce, they got me, but after a couple of moments, they accepted an amalgam of Joyce and Maureen, and then they stopped thinking about it, and it worked on that level. Oklahoma at the National was the only time I've ever played in the new National Theatre, which we moved. Laurence Olivier was fired, stabbed in the back by Peter Hall. And if you ever want to read a good theatre book, read Stage Blood by Michael Blakemore. It's a fabulous, fabulous expose. And not very few of the actors who were at the Old Vic as the National Theatre went with. I think James Hayes, who's written a very funny book called Shouting in the Evenings, he went and stayed for like 20 odd years. Michael Gambon, but most of us filtered off to do other things. And the excitement of when that building was being built on the South Bank, and we all thought, we're going to have dressing rooms, that look out on the Thames. It'll be so inspirational. Of course, the last thing an architect of the theatre thinks about is the bloody actors. So we were put on an interim, looking out onto a court, looking at each other. All sorts of stories about people showing their bums in the windows and stuff. Yeah.
What stories?
Because there's
Different sort of podcast.
No inspiration came from that theatre. It's found its feet now, obviously, but we did Oklahoma there. But it was kind of like, it wasn't really ever the National Theatre. It was Trevor Nunn's baby. Trevor Nunn had left as director there, and it was we knew it was a hit from day one. It was just a melting pot of actors, an incredible score, and a wonderful concept from Trevor. Fabulous concept. There were obviously no curtains in the Olivier, and finding Hugh Jackman and making it. The set was perspective, a tiny wooden cabin. I came out on a revolve as Aunt Ella, churning my. Whatever it was I was churning, I never really curd, I suppose, and then off stage you heard this massive 1,000-seater theatre looking down on this wonderful panorama of wood, just an empty stage, and then the oil rig in the background, and then just Hugh Jackman's voice. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow, and it was magic. And every time you opened your door at the end of the evening, there was Howard Keel or, if you get on to somebody. It was just, to be in a hit, that's what I mean. Like, I spent 2 days in Ireland doing, educating Rita. Well, it was, everybody's seen it. So if I have a birthday, the Times put Maureen Lipman, 88 or whatever they choose to call me.
They always get the age wrong,
Always get the age wrong. Educating Rita. 2 days of my life, 58 years career, and that's what I'm remembered for. So in the end, the BT commercials took me in a different direction, and I became a Jewish actress, and that was another whole 2 years of I made 55 commercials in 2 years for a buyout, and the perception became different. So Did
you create that character?
Well, no. Richard Phillips is the man who created it, and he based it on his own mother and aunts. But I got the job. You've got to get the job. I was only 42 when I got it, and I used an amalgam of my mother, but not Northern, and I remember the audition very clearly for J. Walter Thompson. I just did an impro, you know. I rang the kosher butcher in Hampstead suburb and I said, I want your lamb chops. Don't give me any fat. And give me half a dozen of the Viennas. I don't want the ones with the colour in them. And how's your mother's leg? And I got the job.
I'm not surprised. Where were you living at that point then, in London?
I was living in Muswell Hill. And we had moved to a gentleman's house of character and charm, which Jack had seen advertised, and we went along to look at it, and we could probably just afford it. And it was a beautiful house, but on the main road in Colney Hatch Lane. So we had to decide whether we could afford it because it was on the main road, and it was the most lovely house with carved ceilings, and Jack adored it. He got tennis elbow getting all the paint off the fireplaces, and it was a real beautiful old Edwardian house like you would draw as a child. And it had a big garden, had a nice rounded garden at the front, and then it had a big garden at the back, in which J. Walter Thompson paid for me to have an 8-inch Newtonian reflector in an observatory with a sliding roof, because they knew that I'd been jiggered, because my son was passionate then about astronomy. Of course, once you're in Muswell Hill and you point an 8-inch Newtonian reflector at the sky, the only thing you see is the moon, and that's rare. So we left it there. When I moved to Paddington, we left it there. But that house, I'm trying to get a plaque put on that house for Jack, and so far I'm not hearing anything. But he's got a street named after him in Manchester, Jack Rosenthal Street.
Yeah.
So, as you say, whenever you get in a London cab, and I never ever get in a black cab without someone saying to me, "Your old man wrote the Knowledge." And in fact, I directed a stage version of the Knowledge in Charing Cross Theatre under the. Where every 5 minutes you get, going under, you just have to sort of include it in the play.
I suppose the Coronation Street theme, you've almost come back to it in
exactly.
a way, haven't you? Yeah, it's come full circle.
Exactly.
What was his sort of writing technique? Did he hide himself away for long periods of time? Did he work first thing in the morning, or? He was writing at one section of his brain all the time, but he was the most disturbable man. I mean, there are stories about, my mother coming in and just standing behind him while he's trying to think of something, and him saying, "What is it, Zelma? Is it important? Do you stack the dishwasher from the back? Do you put the plate, do you rinse them off before? I'll be with you in a minute, Zelma, and then I do this, but unless it's really important, can you not bother? Oh, sorry. Oh, I didn't realise you were. I thought you were just looking out the window." And then 20 minutes later, she's standing there again. And he said, "Zelma, is it important?" And she said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, what is it?" And she said, "I'm just going to Brent Cross. Does this jumper go with this skirt?" And he was so disturbable. David Putnam once said to him, "If you tell me you can't make the meeting because you're taking Amy to the orthodontist, get a Margaret. Get someone who'll do this for you. You're both working." And Jack said to him, "David, what would I write about?"
Yes.
You got to put yourself in the way of real life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that says it all, really, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other point of raspberry ripple through your life, as I understand it, is this idea of pubs being vital. Because I understand that you met Jack in a pub. He's written episodes for pubs. You made a career out of acting in a pub. We're sitting in a pub doing a podcast about pubs. I mean, what is it with pubs and English people, do you think?
You're not bending this round at all, are you, Tam?
No,
Not at all. No, I don't
He's
see
worked
any...
on this one for a long
no,
time.
Exactly,
It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does, doesn't it?
I'd never been in a pub until I went to drama school. My family in Hull would not dream of going into a pub. It was just not part of the culture. And I still, still it's not the natural place for me. But I like a drink more than I used to. I there's rarely a day go by that I don't fancy a glass of wine. The pub in the street, of course, in Coronation Street, it's the centre of everything. It has to be, because we've got nowhere else to go. They've got a bistro now, but my character very rarely gets into the bistro. And of course, when you do the Coronation Street tour, you realise that the outside of the pub is, there's nothing behind it but some struts, and the inside is in a studio. Everything's in a studio. So, you go from the Dobbs house to the pub and to the corner shop where I sometimes work. And the makeup and hair are in the main building, so, you spend an hour. Since COVID, I've always done my own hair and makeup, often to a fault. When I turn the television on, I realise how bad I am at doing it. But, then you come out of the building and you walk to the pub, and by which time, it's all over the place. It's a complete, anyway.
So how do you put a rope around all of that?
Well, you've got to stop me, as you know.
I know, it's
Apart from the obvious, thank you very much for rattling on, as you said. Not many people can rattle on to such good effect. But you must admit, you've got a pretty good cast of thousands, as cast of thousands go.
Cast of thousands.
Well, Maggie Smith here, Olivia
Oh, yes,
there.
I've dropped all the right names.
That's right, yeah.
I think the other thing to say about London, and I'm sure all your guests say this, is about the parks. They can't be, look, the Americans are so... Central Park is a blast. But look what we've got. Look at the Heath. You could walk for days. It's so beautiful. It changes every day you go. And then you've got Golders Hill Park, which has animals in it for the kids, and you have... Parliament Hill side of the Heath, you have Regent's Park, you can walk into town. Regent's Park, you have Holland Park, which has got all sorts of historic things in it. You could walk. You can walk the parks of London.
The lungs of London, they call them.
Which is your favourite park?
Well,
Heath sounds like it.
Actually, because I lived in Paddington for the last 20 years, then I would say Kensington Park Gardens, because I was in it a lot. And you can easily walk from there into Hyde Park and into Holland Park. And St James's Park is beautiful as well. We've got so much green in this city.
Is that the one with the pelicans?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. You can walk for 3 miles through the centre of London without touching a road, pretty much, by going to Kensington Gardens and all the way back through Green Park and St James's Park. It's 3 miles.
It's not too late for us to do that, kid.
It's the most gorgeous walk.
Yes.
Well, that's a good place to end it. It sounds like you've got to have a really interesting past. Tick. Great cast of characters. Tick. Huge optimism and love of life. Tick. Curiosity. Tick. And good company. So thank you all for joining us today. My co-host, Geoff, our producer, Chris, and our accidental guest. Welcome, and I hope you enjoyed our guest as much as we did. Maureen, thanks very much. It was
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course, the thing that you haven't touched on, and I haven't touched on.
Well, as Tam and Geoff hurry away to Hampstead Heath to walk off their lunch, it's once again left to your careworn producer to tell you about our next outing. Do join us in 2 weeks' time for a rather special Christmas show, as two of our most popular former guests, Mark Mason and Patrick Kidd, get together to swap Christmas stories and anecdotes. A festive timetable London for Christmas Day, coming to you from the Devereux pub in Middle Temple.